Okay. I welcome Amber for this podcast. This is where you are going to just say to yourself, what's the amount of human touch that is required in the world of development? And trust me, she has never done DevOps in code. And she's not a DevOps professional, by the way. And it's a different niche altogether when you want to really understand what she is doing for this entire infrastructure of technology that we talk today and a lot of things, right? So let's just demystify some more through Amber and stay tuned for future podcasts where I'll be getting a lot of guests like her, where we will be talking about DevOps, not just DevOps, the human touch inside the world of development. So I welcome Amber and thank you so much for giving me this podcast, ma'am. Means a lot.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, ma'am. Let's just understand your journey as a professional. So I know it doesn't match to what you are doing today, but like I just want to understand what was the same Amber when she entered the professional world and what did you start with and how is it going right now? And before that, if you can literally say who was the same Amber when she was 15 or 20 years old, that would actually instill a lot of confidence in the people who might be thinking, oh my God, I'm not doing anything right now. So how can I get inside this world of tech and things like that? So I think let's just start with that. Who is Amber when she was like 15, 20 years old? What was your journey as a student?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's really interesting because my life has had a few twists and turns as in my professional and personal journey, but a real guiding factor throughout my entire journey has been in working with teams, working within a lot of different leadership positions and roles in helping teams and helping people exceed the extraordinary or achieve the extraordinary. And whenever I was younger, whenever I was, 15, 16, 17 years old, I was very involved in a variety of different organizations, different clubs, did a lot of different athletic, did soccer, football, tennis, track and field. So I did a lot of different sports. And in many of these organizations and positions, actually in most of them, I took on some sort of leadership role. And that taught me a lot about leading a variety of different teams, right? So working with a Spanish club is going to be different than working with more of a technology club than working with a football team. So working with a variety of different people to really lead others in achieving their goals. And so that's something that honestly I loved whenever I was a teenager and moving into college. I didn't have a clear idea of what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to be a part of an organization and a part of a team that was working towards something great. And so that's very vague. Didn't really know what that meant. How are we going to help teams perform well? But I went to the Oral Roberts University for my undergraduate career. I was a Division I athlete, competed in athletics. So I did track and field. I earned a degree in organizational communications. So how do we speak and communicate effectively to large organizations and groups of people? And from there, I went on to the University of Oklahoma for my master's and earned a master's in organizational dynamics. And during that time, I actually became student body president for the university. And that was a fantastic opportunity to really implement the ideas that I was learning in the classroom with an organization from the get-go. So I was leaving the classroom and coming in and really implementing these ideas. And it was during that time that I was able to grow in my formal education, but I was also able to grow in different experiences and professional education as well. So I actually began work with a very large healthcare organization. We had about 11,000 employees, and I was working in human resources and really floated throughout that department. So worked in recruitment and comp and benefits, employee relations, and in all of those situations, we are addressing the challenge of how do we properly build a team? How do we train a team? How do we lead a team? And in a healthcare organization, that team is doctors and nurses and nurses aides, right? And so you're working with a variety of people. I also founded a nonprofit organization whenever I was 18. And so I was working with a team of people there. We had, within the course of a few years, we helped over 1,000 international students in our city to know more about the city, get more connected with the organization, and provide them opportunities to really plug into our community. And so through all of these situations, my goal was to work with a variety of different teams to help them achieve goals. And so it was of no surprise whenever I graduated from my master's, I had several opportunities to move up within corporate America and decided to take a shift and try working with a different type of team. So I moved to India and lived in Bangalore, India, and was working with Paris Saint-Germain, which is a French football club, and also with Adidas Game Day Academy. And so in this situation, I was working with elite sports academies. So our goal was to take really talented individuals that have high level of skill, high level of understanding, and create an environment and coach talent to work together well. And so this was a very unique challenge. We worked with all throughout India, all throughout South India, and we worked within international schools. We worked in a variety of different socioeconomic settings, different geographic locations. And so this was a great opportunity to find extremely talented individuals and create an environment so that they could succeed. And so we did that through new curriculum development, honestly, very, very progressive curriculum development that transferred from a command obey dynamic of stand in a line, kick a ball, wait for instruction, to one of more collaborative ownership. And this was transformative in our performance as a team, because in a command obey dynamic, we had team members that within the course of a match would kick the ball perfectly, exactly the way that we taught them, because they would stand in a line, kick a ball, wait for instruction during practice. But in a match, they would kick a ball just like we taught them, and then they would turn to the sideline to the coach for further direction and feedback. And while it might be easy to hear that story and think of it as a sports academy with young athletes, in reality, we see this within teams, especially within DevOps teams, within tech teams today. Of we receive a task, we complete the task, and then we look to whoever the leader is for further instruction. And so we transformed. I worked with about 13 different teams there to move from command obey, a command and obey dynamic, to one of more ownership and one of more collaboration. And so I did that throughout India, and then I moved on to other parts of Southeast Asia, moved all over, worked with a variety of different teams in Southeast Asia, some in Europe, some in North America. So worked with a variety of different types of sports teams. And we really had some really transformative ways that we were working with teams. And it wasn't long after that, whenever I came back to the United States, that I had organizations calling and saying, hey, we see what you're doing with these athletes. Is there a way to implement these ideas and these practices within our teams? And so it's funny, the first time that I was called to go to an agile conference, coming from a sports background, that's a sports term, to be agile. And I actually didn't realize that it was within a tech conference. And so I had the ability, to go to Finland, to go to Helsinki and work with some really remarkable developers. And so we were discussing, how do we achieve our goal of creating great product? And so this is where a lot of those concepts that I had learned from age 15, 16, of working with teams, improving that communication, conflict resolution, leadership, all of those ideas we were able to apply within a new setting, right? So it's finding those transferable skills. And so here I had all of these skills of leading a team, and we were able to apply that within DevOps. And so worked with a lot of different scrum masters, with agile enthusiasts, with a variety of different developers all over the world. Today, our company has worked with teams on every inhabited continent, specifically within tech. And we take that idea of creating an environment for high performance. And while it's so important, again, I have a background in human resources. I actually was an HR director for a large company, and so I know the importance of having a process, having those methods. At the same time, it's very important and overlooked to see and recognize and build skills within team building, within leadership, within communication, within cross-cultural collaboration. And oftentimes, the disconnect that we see and the error rate that we see within teams, it can come from not having the right resources or tools or processes, but oftentimes it can also come from this a lack of communication, a lack of understanding, a lack of clarity within direction. And so it's not that there is a human side and a tech side of a team. It's that the two are equally very important, and they can be symbiotic in working with a team. So by opening our view to have a holistic approach to teams, we are able to, again, create an environment where our talent and our skill within a team can be amplified and can be brought up to a level that is higher than what we had seen before.
Yeah, I think probably a teaching from a sport is something which can turn any person into a new person. Like, it's all about winning and losing. And even when you look at the holy books from any caste, any creed, any culture, always they ponder upon the fact upon what you need to learn and what you need to understand from the right situation. And even when you look at the holy book which I have in my culture, it's Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata, Ramayana. All these start with a war. Like that scenario is a war, and we all have that war inside us, being psychologically just playing with the emotions that we get over the course of time and things like that. So I want to understand, like, what did sports really teach you about people? Because now we are seeing people in tech, but before you saw people who are not speaking tech, but yet they were quite agile in terms of their methodologies, because that's what it is all about. Sports is always about improving little by little every instance that you always practice, and everything comes up. So I just want, because I've been a player who used to play tennis, and I've been working a lot with other sportsmen also. So I even played badminton for a while, but I love racket sports. I will be very frank with you. I hate some kind of sports like football. Sorry to say that. Like, it's a little boring for me. for I love basketball. Yeah, I sometimes love football because when they score goal, but it's so long. Yeah, that's what it is all about. So everybody has their own taste, everybody has their own thoughts about the sport. So I just want to understand, what was that learning that really chiseled you up as a human being that you are today, that you got from the sports? Because sports is something which has never been considered as a tech thing. Like, people really fear if you are more indulged into sports, probably some people might not become friends with you because you're always sports, sports, sports. You don't talk anything money. And I just want to understand, what was the learning that really changed Amber?
Mhm. So there's two really big things that I learned as an athlete and then implemented as a coach as well. And the first thing is, failure is it's a part of life, it's a part of the game, and it's something that is inevitable. And oftentimes I hear coaches, leaders, people say, "Oh, well, we didn't lose, we learned." And that is that's a great statement, but it doesn't stand by itself. So sometimes we hear that as, okay, well, that was a good learning experience. or, oh, that didn't work out, but that was a learning experience. And then we forget to ask the important question, the important follow-up question that actually brings weight to that statement. And that's, well, what did you learn? And sometimes we write off and say, okay, well, we lost, but we didn't lose, we learned. And so now we can move on. Tomorrow's a new day. I think that's such a missed opportunity. And so even whenever you do lose, having those questions. And so in Agile, right, we call this is a part of a retrospective, right? So we're asking, what did we do well? What can we do better? What do we want to do different next time? And so this is a part, it's embedded within Agile, but within football or tennis or any sport, there is a designated time, whether it be at a halftime, at a break, at a timeout, in between sets. You have the opportunity to have those questions. Say, okay, that didn't work out. Why didn't that work out? What can I do differently? What did I learn? And I think, in my opinion, um, a sign of a really spectacular coach is one that recognizes when those retrospectives can be had or when those questions should be asked. And sometimes I see coaches or I see athletes or players, and they'll ask those questions at the end of a match or at the end of a season. But the reality is we can create those feedback loops even faster. So we'll do that at halftime. We'll do that at a break. And so that's a big lesson that we learned whenever you're playing sports. And that's something I implement within my own life as a student, rather than waiting till the end of the semester to say, okay, what are my grades? What should I do better? How can I improve? I would do a check-in it was about every 3 to 4 weeks. So that's a quarter of the semester. And we'd say, okay, what should I be doing better? How can I adjust? What am I not learning that I need to learn? How can I improve there? And so we're seeing that within sports. We're seeing those concepts applied in academia. We see that applied within Devops team as well. So it's creating those shorter feedback loops so you can get more feedback to improve. And that can come in a variety of different ways. If we're looking at DevOps, it can come from shorter user stories. It can come, it's creating those triggers of when we're going to have those conversations. So that's a big lesson that I learned in sports very early on that I've applied within our own business. And as we've worked with teams as well, is recognizing when to have those crucial conversations. And we have those conversations not only within task oriented goals. So, what are we doing to achieve this goal? We'll also have those conversations within relationships. Hey, we're having a lot of disconnect within communication. What are we doing well? What can we do better? What have we learned? And too oftentimes, conversations like this aren't really happening, right? So we get a disconnect in our cross-cultural collaboration. Where were those disconnects, and how can we do better? So oftentimes we look only at the task, but even whenever I was coaching football and coaching other sports, we would look not only at, did we score a goal, but we also asked, what was our movement whenever we were moving forward? How was our communication? What was our mental endurance? Did we break down mentally halfway through if we weren't doing well, right? So we're looking at all of those different aspects. So here again, we're broadening our we're broadening our viewpoint to be more holistic. So that's the first thing, is recognizing that failure happens. It's a part of life. It's going to happen. But asking yourself, okay, we didn't lose, we learned, but what did we learn? And what can I learn to grow from that failure? That sounds so simple, but here's some very specific examples of when those conversations should be happening. Yeah, so that's the first really, really important aspect. And I want to pause first and see if you have any follow-up questions about that, about those questions of having these meaningful retrospectives.
Because it's not always that win-win situation that comes up every time. It's like
No.
it's like even the best of the best athlete in the team can perform the worst. And today when we look at SRE, DevOps, DevSecOps, ML Ops, AI Ops, leaving all
Mhm.
that, like there are Scrum Masters who are like product owners, product managers, and things like that. But amazing way in which we have seen a lot of jargons coming up, but yet there is a developer who still is a developer. And right now, what do you think about that fact of actually building such kind of an environment? Like everybody has their own successor, or else everybody has their own higher person that they just need to communicate with about, and it's a loop of communication. What do you feel about this? Because in sports, coach is the one who just says, hey, just fetch the ball from here, hey, just hit it like this, just do that. But in organization, it's like one after the other, one after the other, and it's like sequence of communications which happen over the course of time. And what do you feel the some of these things which might be influenced through sports? Because I hope if any CEOs of the company is seeing, I would love to ask him, please provide an office hour which is for sports. And of course, there are some people who have already provided it. I think probably this mindset is just going to mold as a new person. So I just wanted to understand, like, how is this one person being the head of communication different from being what is this in the IT industry and everything like that? Because it's filled with jargons. A lot of people come in all of the sudden. A lot of people are making sense, but some people don't make sense in the middle of the process. So I just want to understand how to deal with such kind of a scenario, because sports has taught a lot of things to me also. Like today, if I might be not giving up on anything, it's because of the coach who used to say me, don't just give up, try for the next bad thing to occur for you. Like just give your complete blood, sweat, and tears. Let it be whatever it is. I
Mhm.
still love you, and still, yeah, I still remember that.
Yeah, it's okay to fail. Exactly. There's um organizations don't have to be that hierarchical where there's one person and it's such a strict hierarchy. And this is something that a lot of organizations are experimenting with at the moment is um, a good friend of mine, he called it organizational physics. Okay, how are we designing our organization so there isn't as much, okay, who do I need to talk to for permission for this? Who do I need to talk to for permission for this? And so we're actually flattening that hierarchy. And so here you're able to increase the collaboration. Now, when you do that, oftentimes uh, those hierarchies, and here we're talking big picture, right? So we're talking organization wide, but those hierarchies where you have a lot of permission, you have a lot of jargon, can be simplified even before they're flat. So let's say, okay, I'm not in a position to flatten the hierarchy that we have. What I can do is provide more ownership. And so here we're creating a situation where there's more action taken rather than discussion on who do I need to permission for this? How do I do this? And so instead we're creating more simple processes so people can have more ownership. I'll give you an example. This is a non-sports example, but it's a good example. And so there's two airlines. There's a variety of different airlines, but there's two airlines that come to mind. So there is a large airline company called United Airlines that many years ago they had a situation where they had accidentally overbooked the flight, and the people that worked for United, they didn't they ended up dragging the man off of the plane, and that was how they chose to handle the situation. There was a lot of conversation of, did they feel like they had the freedom to make those other accommodations, to have the conversations that they needed, to be more flexible. So here there was a big conversation of, did the people on the ground at the airport have the flexibility to be agile to solve these situations? Now, you take that as opposed to another airline called Southwest Airlines. They're more common they're based in Texas in the US. So they're more US based, but they're very well known for having extremely simple processes. So you can only book flights on their website. That makes it more simple. They only have one airplane that they use. So there's not a variety of airplanes. They don't assign seats. And so they take all of that complexity out. They don't, first few bags, 2 bags fly free. So they take out that complexity. So here they're just taking out at the layers of complexity. So the result is that team members have a very simple process that is understood. And oftentimes a lack of ownership simply comes from a lack of understanding. I'm not going to touch that because I'm afraid to fail because I don't really understand it. I don't know what's all involved in this, and I don't want to mess something up. Well, if you have something very simple and very understood, then people will generally feel more confident in operating under that system. So Southwest is a phenomenal job of creating a simple system that everyone understands. And so if somebody gets, well, this happened to me. I accidentally missed a flight. And they said, oh, that's no problem. We have another flight in and out. No charge, because they didn't have the assigned seats. They didn't have to take out a seat and assign a new seat and reroute. They didn't have to do any of that. They just said, yeah, we have another plane. We know exactly how many seats are on this plane because we exact same planes for every single flight that goes out. Make it very simple. Now, we did this within sports as well. So you actually see this within some athletic teams where they have a very thick playbook, right? And so you have team members that they say, okay, we're going to do play 37A 92B. They go, okay, I don't really know what that is, right? And so
I think
actually
even bodybuilding, I think
bodybuilding,
people might judge the fact that okay, they're being judged by the way they look without their clothes on. Trust me, there is an science behind
has a
bodybuilding.
science. Yeah,
And I think
exactly.
if you had read Mark Ripeto's book, Starting Strength, it was given to me by an coach of mine in the gym. His name is Subhash Chandra, amazing coach. I think there is a lot to learn. I think I can read a book. You give me a novel, I can read it in like 2 hours if it's like around 200 pages of book, probably. But that book took me, I read around not 15, I think 10 to 12 pages max. And it took me 1.5 hours. And I was like,
Oh,
this is so much.
you can make it complicated. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like biology redefined once again.
Mm.
And I even follow his podcast, this Starting Strength podcast. Amazing content. If you can follow, I think I would love to hear what are your views on that. Probably in the future podcast. I think sport has been something which is more indulged into a lot of things. Like it's not like if you think of the worst sport according to an athlete, he obviously might say it's the worst sport to him, but I feel somehow I'm not a bodybuilder, but I feel somehow bodybuilding is somewhere worse than any of the other sports because it's a single man who just goes out, nothing in his hand, just the flexing muscles and things like that. So I just want you also to address the fact about like a one man show that might happen sometimes, like one person leading up and saying what is it, and sometimes team winning what is it, and that's what I really wanted from you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that even with the one-man show, it's going to be the same thing, right? You need to simplify those processes and make things really simple. So yeah, it's the same thing of, I'll have players come up and they go, Ember, I want to learn 27 new skills. I said, we're going to learn 4. and we're going to do this for really, really well and understand them. And it's better to master 4 skills really, really well than know 27 at a mediocre level. And so I think the same thing happens even if you're a team of 1. Sometimes you say, okay, they want me to wear 37 different hats. And we see the same thing in HR quite a bit. They go, you're a department of 1, wear all of these hats. And to a degree, say, okay, I'm going to do some of these things really, really well. I'm going to excel in these areas. And then the other areas, they still need to get done, right? They still need to happen. But I'm going to simply manage those. And so finding an area, Marcus Buckingham talks about this in Go Discover Your Strengths, or Go Put Your Strengths to Work is the one that I would recommend. But he talks about how we have so many things that we have to do, especially for a department of 1, that it can be easy to do everything at a mediocre level, or focus on the areas that we really struggle on and then not give a lot of attention to the areas in which we excel. And so in that situation, you really have to understand, you can't ignore the other things that need to happen. It might not be your areas of strength, but if you're the only one in the department, there's still things that need to happen. You still have tasks that you need to achieve, but you manage those and then you excel in a few others, and you really seek to build upon your strengths. And that's going to be the best way that you can increase your value, because ideally, eventually your department will begin to grow. And if you're doing your job, if the organization is doing well, all right, and the job is doing well, then you'll be in a position whenever you do become a department of 2 or a department of 3, that you'll be able to understand with clarity of, these are the areas in which I excel. These are the areas that we can really seek somebody else that excels in these areas. And sometimes I see departments of 1 that they've been a department of 1 for so long that whenever it does come time to expand and grow, then there's some fogginess of, okay, but what's going to be my job? What do I want to do? And this is a unique opportunity where you have an opportunity to create your own your own position, where you can position yourself with areas of strength. So it's really exciting, because whenever you focus on your areas of strength, then you can also be very strategic whenever you collaborate with others, and knowing who you can collaborate with, or who you would best collaborate with, because their strengths are going to complement yours.
Yeah, what are some of the worst practices that you saw today in the world of tech? Because a lot of times when we make sure that we have to learn something, I think probably we are forgetting the fact that we are human beings. We are prone to make errors. Like, we should be knowing the fact that we are still human beings and we are not yet machines yet, because there is no neural link which has been connected, and there is nobody controlling us for sure. So I just wanted to understand, like, what are some of the worst practices that you saw in an organization of tech today? Because I think probably when you started this journey as an consultant, or any person who is going to guide the tech folks, I think probably you would have had told, I think I chose a wrong path right now. So probably, I don't know about that. So can you convey your thoughts on some of the worst practices that is going on in the world of DevOps, or else in the world of tech today?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So as clarity, so I do own a company today called the Pathways Group. And so we do training and development within teams, and work a lot within leadership development, team development. And we work with organizations all over the globe, and of a variety of different sizes. And by far, the biggest area of disconnect that we see within teams is a lack of clarity and communication. That sounds very vague, so let me be more specific. So there, especially because many of us are remote now, I will talk to team members, and the one person believes that this is the goal. Another person thinks that there's another goal. Another person is measuring success one way. And so one's looking at error rates, one's looking at completion time, one's looking at quality control. And they all have such different goals that the overarching goal is not communicated. And here you have different priorities. So people are prioritizing their tasks different. They're measuring success differently. Then there can be a massive disconnect in communication, in collaboration. So you have that on one goal of lack of clarity in communication of goals. You also have a lack of clarity in communication of roles. So I actually was working with an executive just a few weeks ago, and they were explaining how they were wanting because they were trying to do DevSecOps. So they had security, they had DevOps, and they had the business aspect. And they said, why are they not collaborating well? Why is this not working out? Well, the reality is that the DevOps people had no idea what the business people did. Like no idea, no clue at
I
all.
think
The
this
business people,
actually goes on with some of the developer advocates talking with a lot of people in the business
yeah,
roles.
all
That's
the time.
probably might be the problem there. Yeah.
Exactly. The business people thought, well, security is just those people that make me change my password. That's all I know about them. And then the security was like, DevOps, we don't even know what that means. And then we put them all in a room and say, go collaborate and fix a problem. Well, the first thing that you have to do is have clarity on what everyone's role is. And that's really goes back to that first goal of knowing your strengths and being able to explain clearly what you do. And you talked a little earlier about jargon being used within the team, and it's important to understand the role of jargon, because jargon is meant as a shortcut in communication. So rather, if you're having a massive ransomware going on within your department and you're talking to the security team, they need to be able to use that jargon because they have a big problem that they need to fix right now. And they don't have time to explain everything every single time. So jargon is used as a shortcut in communication. So if you're talking within the security team during a ransomware attack, that's really important to have that jargon. Now, in the same ransomware attack, if the security team is going to the business team, is going to the executives, and they have to explain what's going on, that jargon is not going to be as helpful, right? So there's a place for jargon. The goal is not to clarify communication by getting rid of jargon, because that's not the goal. The goal is understanding the purpose of that jargon and then being able to clarify jargon to people outside of that industry. So in clarification, you're using comparisons, you're using imagery, you're using very simple language, and you're using those concepts as they are relevant to the other person. I don't really care about certain aspects of the ransomware. I just need to know what's going on, and I need the pertinent information so that I can make a decision within my role to move forward. And so again, it's that lack of clarity in communication. So you have lack of clarity in communication within tasks, as in what's our goal, what's our vision, why are we doing this, what are we doing, how are we measuring success. That area of lack of communication leads to so many breakdowns within teams. We also see a lack of clarity within roles and what people actually do. And then another lack of clarity that we find is within the actual words that we use. And it's important to recognize what jargon actually can entail. So we do have industry jargon. We also have um, we also have cultural jargon. So in my organization, whenever we say a certain word, then whenever we say come on time, for some teams, coming to a meeting on time means they come at the top of the hour. For some, that means you come within the first 15 minutes. So sometimes it's really as simple as that, right? So we'll actually go through exercises to clarify expectations. And literally yesterday, I was talking to a director, and she said, we have such a disconnect within the language, because what was the word? Advocate. That was the word. And so one person in the team, they were explaining, we are an advocate. Well, their intention of that word was, we will be a resource to you, and we will,
Help
if
you.
you, and we will help you, and we will be there. Another person on the team who was helping to communicate this to the external party took that as, we are the one-stop shop for any and all things that you will ever need. And so then there was a disconnect, because one person was saying, why are we getting calls for everything under the sun? They go, well, that's what an advocate is. No, that's not what an advocate is. And then there was a disconnect, right? And so that was a disconnect in jargon within the organization as a whole. So it's really clarifying. So what we did in that situation is, we literally got out a piece of paper and we made a list of every word that was commonly used within their daily operations, and said, okay, whenever you say this, what do you mean? Give a situation, give an image, give a story in which these words are going to be used. And what we found is, there was a lot of the daily vocabulary that was being used, that there was a disconnect in clarity, and it was causing of um, a lot of strife within the team, and it was affecting team performance, of course. And so, uh, yeah, that literally just happened yesterday. We were working with a team, and that was happening. And so, uh, consistently a lack of clarity, and this happens in sports too, right? So this is a lot of these sports skills of, how are we defining success? Whenever you say, go run a mile, are we running for distance? Are we running for time? Are we running for technique? Right? So what's the goal? Why am I doing this? What's the purpose? And so, that lack of clarity has so many levels of breakdown. So I know that was a broad answer, so I wanted to give specific examples of what I meant. That's something that we're seeing within teams all over the world, that really breaks down performance.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Because today, when you see of the world, which is more of like, you talk fancy, I'm gonna hire you.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
so worse. Sometimes I feel like, should I really learn some fancy stuff and just go portray? I know this. And when the production problem comes up, and it's a different ball game, because we have never understood what was this thing. Because even in academia, when we are a student, there's a mismatch in the mindsets that you come in. Because I still remember me going inside college, my college, with a lot of passion that I'm going to be an EC grad, but now I'm an CS grad almost. And I feel
Mm,
so sad that I spent 4 years of my life pondering upon why did I choose this. And sometimes decision make a huge difference in the departments of whatever you consider. Let it be sports, let it be Devops, and the things like that. But I wanna understand what made you decide to come back to the tech. Like, you were never part of the tech, but you went from analyzing something called as a tech, and you just came back. Was there any developers that you saw and you got influenced by, hey, maybe my methods are going to be awesome here. Like, let me just go and preach them that. Or else, what was it all about? Because you're seeing the world of sports, which is more agile today, which is like an athlete is ready to do anything. If like I can say bodybuilding, where steroids is in like hues of in huge extent to some extent, but not in other sports as well. But some sports are in such a way that we are going to pay you as much as money, but get that endurance and the things like that. So sometimes money plays a humongous role in the performance. Sometimes, not every time, but sometimes it plays a humongous role. But what do you learn about the economic aspects or in the sports? Because a lot of times when we think of bodybuilding, it's a rich man sport. If you think of tennis, it's a rich man sport. I am not rich, but I played some, but I was not able to consistently play. That's my problem, my economic problem. By the way, I can't help that one. So what do you learn about the money side of the tech from the sports? Because a lot of times this also plays a very humongous role.
it does. Um, uh, which in a even just take out the money, it comes down to the humility and the ego of the player, right? So um, we found that there is the way that you measure success is going to affect the focus. And right, so what we found within our players is there were some players that were okay with the fact that we would lose games 10-2 because they were the ones that scored 2 goals. And so there was a greater focus on a scorecard than a scoreboard. And so what we had to do was to find a balance between the two. And so what we did, and what I've done with our teams is we look at the influence that a person has on a successful scoreboard. Now that we could still lose games 10-2, but it means that you are being a team player. How are you responding to challenges? Are you not even being a leader, because we understand not everyone wants to, be in a leadership role, but really moving forward with the team and progressing with the team. And so we look at uh, impact and influence to a successful scoreboard. So like those things I just said, teamwork, responding to challenges, being stepping up whenever things get a little murky, right? So whenever it comes to pay, we really do try to look at understand that there is a scorecard and a scoreboard. A lot of people get annual reviews. That would be the equivalent of a scorecard, right? But we also have the organizational review, so that, or the client review. So that's going to be your scoreboard. And so it's important that we understand that they are two different things, but that they are not completely separate. Bring those closer together. So that's the first thing, is understanding the scorecard and the scoreboard, which was a big impact within our teams. It wasn't necessarily money specifically, but it was more ego and humility and being a team player and understanding what a true leader is. So that's the first thing. And the second is understanding that the second is having a culture of respect within the team. So I remember the coach for the dream team and the 90s basketball team in the US, you had a team of superstars. I mean, every single person on the team was just a complete rock star.
I think
But that
probably
has,
Phil Jackson can be the hero here.
yeah,
Phil
exactly.
Jackson, the guy who
He's
built
great.
a lot of pioneers who are like the goat mountain of the basketball, but trust me,
Yeah.
he was a little influential. I can say
A
that
little influential. Yeah.
in all
Yeah.
their life, not just little, but he made a disruptive move in their life, and he
He
knew
did.
when to stop a player, and that's the biggest goal. Because I still remember Kobe had an interview and saying that Phil just told me just back off a little bit because Shaq is back now, and don't show your complete potentials. And Shaq
Yes.
and Kobe always had a fight together, even though Shaq went to the different team apart from Lakers. Oh my God, that man was crazy enough to just quarrel with any person. So yeah, that's what.
You got it. But yeah, I mean, so in those situations, a huge thing was, okay, we're working with highly paid, well, extremely talented individuals. But guess what? We are not a team of individuals. And that's in sports. We've even seen that in the recent Olympics. There were some teams that I was watching. I was like, "Oh, this is a team of individuals." You can tell in the style of play and the way that people are playing, and you can tell the difference between a team that is more cohesive. And so the way that we foster that within an organization is having those very clear non-negotiable standards, right? So for the dream team, it was everyone will be at the bus on time. We're not going, you will be left. We're not waiting because we're going to be respectful of people's time. And that sounds so minute, but it makes a big statement, right? So
It's
we
a
are
very
going to
big statement, by the
makes
way.
a very big statement, right? We're going to be respectful of other people's time. And you're not so big that we're going to wait an extra 45 minutes for you. No, we're like, you're going to come and join the rest of the team and honor that commitment that you've made. And so that's something that, yes, that's in the sports realm, but we can see that within DevOps teams as well, right? So we're not going to wait 20 minutes for you to come to the stand up. That's only supposed to last 10 minutes, anyways, right? So you need to be here on time, right? And so this is just little simple things that you say, okay, we understand and acknowledge and respect and love the talent and the strengths and the skills that you bring to this team. We also recognize that there are other people on this team with talents and skills and strengths, and we will be respectful of that and acknowledge that our scoreboard, that no matter how many successful scorecards we have, they do not add up to a successful scoreboard. And I think that's a really important lesson all within itself. And so it's really shifting that focus from that scorecard to the overall scoreboard.
In one of your talks, you not always, but you always refer to a similar situation, but it's a different story. You once had this discussion in a talk. I still don't remember that. It's on your YouTube, by the way. I'll put that in the description below. So you said that there are 7 years old, 16 years olds who are thinking about which way to kick. Is it an off kick or an other types of the cake, which is the better one? I still remember that you made a talk somewhere, and it's a recording which is there in your channel. So I would love to ask you, like, what kind of discussion do you really love for all our techies to have? Because a lot of times, forget the personal aspects where we talk about, oh, hey, what's happening in your life and things like that. But like, what do you think is an active discussion that should be happening in a world of tech today? Because a lot of times, I've seen engineers who are like very good in cloud. Like, I am truly amazed by the way they have a knowledge about cloud, and I don't have it because I'm a very big newbie to this world of cloud. Because recently I came across a project, and it's from a community, or it's a community project also, and I saw the previous code which was written, and I was like, man. And I'll be very frank with you, this is my Node.js notes that I have, and it has all the things written on about the Node.js and the things like that. So yeah, it's always there. And I went back and I started studying. Sometimes, I feel overwhelmed that, okay, world is doing this, I'm still behind or something. So I just want you to give that brief understanding to all of us, like, what does that team discussions looks like when we are speaking tech? Forget the personal part, but when we are speaking tech, what do you really expect from a tech team?
Yeah. Oh, that's so exciting. So a big question that I ask within teams is first off providing that clarity. So that's the biggest disconnect and the breakdown of team performance that we're seeing is a lack of clarity. If you are working with another team of technologists, a big question that you should be having is, hey, whenever you say this, what do you mean by this? Hey, whenever we're doing this, why do we do this? So asking that what and why question is really, really important. And then that next, which is very vague, but it's really providing that clarity. But the next question, so clarity allows you to work with more confidence. But the next question is the hows. And so, here, once we have clarity, many times we don't know how we're actually going to achieve that goal or how we're actually going to work towards that vision. And so that's an exciting thing that we get to do with the pathways is say, hey, there's not always one right answer. In fact, a lot of times there's multiple answers that could happen. And if I remember correctly, the story that you're bringing up is whenever I would challenge my players, I would challenge them with a game of rather than stand in the line, kick a ball, wait for instruction, I would say from here, kick the ball and knock down those 3 cones. And from discussions like this, so we've clarified this is what you're going to do. And then we go a step further and say, because in order to do that, you're going to have to kick with power and precision. And in a game scenario, whenever you pass, whenever you kick, whenever you shoot, you're also going to have to kick with power and precision. And from challenges like these, we would have clarity in what we're doing and why it's important. And the conversation would be in how. This is where I saw some of the most heated debates I'd ever seen amongst 7-year-olds, trying to decide if the best way to kick the ball was with the infoot or the laces. And the reality was is that both ways were right. And so our players had actually discovered two ways to kick the ball instead of one. And this happened from a meaningful conversation of we both know what needs to be done and why that is important. Now, what are the different processes, different methods, different projects, different roles that are going to allow us to get to that uh, successful destination uh, in a way that is uniquely better? And the exciting thing about this industry, and kind of alluded to it earlier, the thing that really draws me to this industry specifically is that there is an opportunity to be extremely creative and very innovative as you are moving forward in a way that is not as common in other industries. And so here you have the unique opportunity to say, what if we did this? How are we going to do this? Well, what if we tried this? What if we tried this? What if we tried this? And you have the ability to dream. And so rather than saying what specifically are the questions, I'm going to give you some prefixes that you should add to your questions. That's first saying, what if we did this? And I'm going to add a suffix and say, we haven't done this yet. Let's try. We haven't accomplished this yet. And so adding those what ifs and adding those yets to your conversation, especially with technologists as you are getting ready to move forward, it creates an opportunity to act with clarity. You've acted with clarity within your what and why, and then you have the flexibility and you have the agility to really move forward to create something that is better than before.
Sometimes this is what is required for a team. Let's just forget the fact that you're earning money. Earning money is a part and parcel of your work that is being delivered. Or else, even if you don't deliver, even if you are like, okay, I want to give solutions, just do it. Probably that's going to be your job tomorrow, because that's what solution architects, DevOps engineers do on a day-to-day life. So I think last question about, like, what was your first tech talk all about? Because I know you have done a lot of team meets, you know how to handle groups and groups of people, but what was your tech talk all about? Because I and you, we both met in the same tech talk, right? you know we had the same tech talk, and I think our slots were different, but we delivered on the same conference. So yeah, I just want to ask you, what was your first tech talk looks like?
My first one, so my first one that I ever did in technology was how to lead change within teams. And so in that one, we went very specific in adopting a change mindset. So we actually went through frameworks on whenever you come into a team and you want to implement change, this is the framework and the step work. So I lean pretty heavily on John Cotter's uh, framework for change. So he has an 8-step process, has a really great book called Leading Change. If you want a really simple one, he has one called The Iceberg is Melting that goes through that process of change. I partner that with some practical experience and activities, and then really addressing the challenges that can occur within those frameworks. Sometimes whenever I see those series and see those frameworks, it sounds cool. It's really great, but we usually don't take the time to address, well, these challenges will most likely occur. This is how you can handle this. So that was the first technology talk that I gave, was leading change within organizations and how to equip your team for change within teams. And so that's actually a workshop that we do quite often within the Pathways group today. And then today, the most popular tech talk that I have, I have one on innovation, so creative problem solving, and then I have a second one, workshop and tech talk that I do on performance feedback. And so I think that that's the one that you probably saw, which was how to actually give performance feedback. And so yeah, not just saying, oh, we lost, we learned, oh, that failed, now we can move on. No, it's actually how to give quality performance feedback, leaning into those people skills, right? So, what method of communication should I be using? An email, in person, a Slack message, right? So, leaning into those methods of communication, those frameworks of communication of what to ask, how to assess your goals of of that performance feedback, and really frameworks of how often to get feedback as well, and how to document and move forward from that. So, so those are the first one I gave was on leading change in organizations. That's a workshop that we do quite a bit. Today, the most popular ones have been on creative problem solving and on performance feedback.
I think it's there in your channel's playlist. It's like
I think so.
speaking engagement.
Yeah, and speaking
Yes,
engagement.
speaking
Yeah.
engagement. I still remember that. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Because, yeah, let's just end with some bullet points of books and the blogs that you would always suggest any of the newbies who are now entering the tech field. Because I think probably when you are a sportswoman, probably that way of understanding what this book or this knowledge is all about is something different. Because I've experienced it, because I have been a deep learning researcher for a very long time now. Like, it's been 4 years of engineering, in which 4 years I have gone through a lot of changes in my mindset itself, and the way I choose some subjects for research. And even my final year project was almost equivalent to the something like a photonics, which was integrated with something with deep learning.
Mm,
So a lot of things have changed, and developers' perspective have changed, and there are a lot of other things which are coping up today. So I just want you to point out to some things which are like books or the blogs that you really want any person to understand first before entering this world of tech. Forget tech. If you want to live your life to the fullest, probably see her talks. I think that's the best medicine that you can give for any person. Like, if you're feeling down in life and you're saying, okay, this tech world is nothing, just look at her. She's nowhere related to tech. She's in the tech vicinity right now. So understand
mhm.
what it is, what the process is all about. Understand your niche, then get in. So no thoughts about it.
Typical
So
journey.
over to you, ma'am. Any books, any blogs that you really want to point out to?
Yeah. I mean, especially going into this industry, so there's a book called Turn the Ship Around, that is by David Marquette. So he is actually a Navy captain, but he talks about leading within his team and helping his team become more agile. But the impact and the way that he did it is so inspiring, and really something that I recommend for anybody in the DevOps space, is Turn the Ship Around. That's a great one. Crucial Conversations is also a great one as well. So Crucial Conversations is frameworks that you can use whenever having really high stakes conversations within your team, which in in this space, we're dealing with a lot of really important, really revolutionary tech. And it's important that we have the ability to have a framework to have these crucial conversations whenever we're talking to other people within the organization, and whenever we're talking with other people within our team, as well. So, Turn the Ship Around by David Marquette is great. Crucial Conversations is a solid read as well. And I mean, selfish plug. I have a book that's coming out in a few weeks called Uniquely Better, and it's actually about our process of transforming teams within India specifically. So I talk about those teams specifically, but we talk about how we transformed from a command and obey dynamic to one of more collaborative ownership. And it's a fun story. You get to learn a little bit about football, and it tells some fun stories about living in India. But the meat of the book is really tools and resources that you can use to establish a uniquely better culture within your team. And obviously, being more agile is a massive part of that. So, yeah, so those are three big books that I would, or three really solid books that I would recommend. And then last but not least, I mean, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. I usually post once or twice a week some new content on how to lead teams.
Hmm. Yeah, I think perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much for giving me a lot of insights Thank you so much for giving such a huge insights about tech, because a lot of times we forget the fact that it's not complex. It's been built by a human being, but it's just a little bit of sense that you want to really put in. But it's basically presence of mind that you just put in when you're learning. Like, I can say I can learn the same concept in 5 days, but I can also understand what's behind it for an hour. Then I can go back and revise the topics. I think probably that's a very less time, huge learning. That's what it is all about. So get to know your niche, get to know where your presence of mind lies. I think that's what it is all about. So there's nothing complex. Happy tech. Thank you so much, folks, and thank you
Thank
so much, ma'am, for giving this podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You have a wonderful rest of the day.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so